Well, hello everyone, and welcome to ThinkYoung Alumni Talks. So today is our first ever episode, and we are very, very excited here at ThinkYoung. So as a part of our growing community here at ThinkYoung, we want to engage with people who want to make the world a better place for young people. So that's why today we are going to ignite a spark in young people all across the world to explore different of their different passions and to explore different career opportunities. And the way we are doing that is by inviting our ThinkYoung alumni and why they're going to showcase their experience, how they experienced life at ThinkYoung, and how they pressed through their careers. So today we are very, very lucky to have one of our amazing alumni called Simone Disegni, and he is now editor at Reset DOC and is currently working in journalism. So we are very glad to have you here today. And I just want to say to our audience quickly, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section of the platform you're watching on. So Simone, I want to ask you today, so you joined ThinkYoung all the way back in February 2010, which was, it seems like absolutely ages ago now, but so you were doing this whilst undertaking your undergraduate degree in Brussels in European affairs. So tell me a bit more about your time at ThinkYoung, what you experienced, and also how you were doing a degree at the same time as well.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thanks Wolfet thanks to ThinkYoung for the opportunity to reconnect. First of all, as you say, it's been a while, and then I've been following, of course, later in the last few years what ThinkYoung does. But getting a newsletter and opening it once upon a time or a social media post is not the same thing as talking to each other, though remotely. So thanks for the chance. Yeah, so it was actually 10 years ago. I made the count myself, or even a little bit more. And I would say that was the very first real job opportunity, both for me and for ThinkYoung as well. On the other side, I think, because I was in Brussels, as you were saying, but by the time studying for my master's in European studies. When these things popped up to me, and so ThinkYoung was not just a startup, but something which needed to be started up at the time. It was a very cool project in the mind of Andrea Gerosa, the founder, and he was looking for the first staff. So it was a thrilling adventure, I would say, because as you can imagine, it was everything was to be built, including the first office and everything else, and the first campaigns, the first business cards, whatever. So it was I think it was a very fun way to start my career, as I'm sure it is for you guys now, by the way.
No, I was about to say, as an intern myself, it's been very exciting. So I don't know how it would be to be an intern to actually work for ThinkYoung right at the beginning. So it must have been very exciting as well, just as exciting as we have it today. So tell me a bit more about your time at ThinkYoung. So what projects were you working on? What sort of exciting things were you doing at the time?
I had to go back with my mind because there's a little time lapse meanwhile. But what I was mostly working on, at least for the first few months, was a big survey. I remember we did in advance of the European Business Summit, which is an yearly summit, I believe, still gathering these days too, with all the main business leaders and policymakers as well in Brussels. And I remember the very first thing we were invited to do by them was precisely in the mission of ThinkYoung, gathering the opinions of a few dozens key young leaders from across Europe in different sectors, so in politics, in business, in the civil society, in order to gather their views on how to refresh the European Union, an issue which is never vintage, I would say. We are always at the same in the same spirit of searching for the next step, I would say. But at the time as well, it was just after the Lisbon Treaty entering into force, so it was a time also of rethinking as well. And it was an interesting way to enter into the public debate with that. And also, I have to say, I went back to some of the things I produced at the time, and it's also funny to notice that one of the things I had the opportunity to do was to publish some articles in different magazines dealing with the European Union affairs, because we had set up at the time a small writing team. And if I look back at that now, I can say it was a little bit of a trial for my current career now, which is, as you said, in journalism.
Thank you so much for that. So, as I think someone who works more in PR at ThinkYoung as well, so it's great to meet another sort of journalist, someone who works in media section as well. So, thank you for telling us a bit more about that. I want to hear a bit more about sort of the sort of challenges you face at ThinkYoung and what you learned at your time at ThinkYoung as well.
Well, as I said, I mean, everything was to be built at the time in a way. There was a lot of enthusiasm, but also a lot of the white paper that you see on your screen when you start writing a paper or an article. The same with projects, right? So that was an interesting situation, and I think it provided me and the other guys who worked with me at the time at ThinkYoung the opportunity to think in a different way at the end of the day at the job market. Because when you're starting, you think that of the job market as something very far away. It's difficult to grasp what this is all about. You think you will need to be super serious and super in some rules and guiding principles and so on, and you have a hard time imagining how you can have a say and an impact. And actually, when you work in small organizations like this, but also in other ones, I think you realize that no, at the end, actually, it's a lot more in the times we're living now. Of course, about yourself, about what you can actually do, what you can propose, what you can create in many ways. And so I was happy, because it's probably a feature of my own way of being, that it was just strengthened to have the opportunity to put myself into the game and to propose things and to create, not just to execute things that some boss tells you from the other room, No,
I was going to say, I think I've experienced the same thing right now. So when I graduated university, I felt the same. I thought, when I go to my career, everything will be very rigid, will be very corporate, very stern. And then as soon as I came to ThinkYoung, I sort of learned that you can explore your creativity, you can propose new opportunities, and that's what I think is great, especially about working in a small organization as well. So it's great to hear that you've had very similar opportunities that I'm having now as well. So as a young person who's sort of kickstarting my career, especially in PR and journalism and sort of in media outlets as well, what kind of advice can you give me for my future career, especially from your time that you've learned at ThinkYoung as well?
Well, that's not an easy question, of course. But the main thing I would say in general, then, of course, there are differences from country to country, from sector to sector. But it's really to have, I think, a proactive attitude. I mean, don't think too much of why you would like to be in a specific post or in a specific job post, I would say, but mostly of why they would need you to be in that place, and what you could give of special, of different from anyone else. I think we as youngsters, the previous generations are not giving any presents to us. They're not. It's not an easy time to graduate, for sure. This one to start a career. So I think each of us really needs to to know what he or she is really good at. You have to know it yourself and work on it, because if you don't know it yourself, and if you're not really sure about that yourself and confident, nobody will, honestly, and certainly not the bosses or people of previous generations, which will regard you as just, you know, some raw material for their businesses, and that's not the way we need to be seen, each of us.
Thank you very much. I want to pick up on a point you said there. You said about young people, if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't have the confidence. Say for someone who's just come out of university or who's come out of their early education and they don't know what to do in their careers and they're sort of a bit lost. What advice would you give them?
Not easy, really. I think, and that's something I wanted perhaps to come when we speak perhaps about the future of our countries, the future of Europe. I think this is a key point, because that's not an easy thing that one can solve on his own. That's a difficult season. I think we all experience at some point in our life, especially at that critical point you mentioned. And honestly, it's difficult to come out of it on our own, because we need help sometimes in life and in career. So I think that's it was interesting. This last weekend we had this big gathering in Porto of the European Union, of the European institutions, relaunching, as they call it, the social pillar of the European Union. I think this is really a key priority in this moment, to modernize our welfare states, to have them more, to get it to be more adapted to our times, because people really need at some different point in their career, and especially at the start of their career, they need guidance to, as you correctly said, to really help them understand what they really are good at, what they really want to do, and how they can help the society. So I think this is a big effort that the whole European Union and every single country should really put effort in, with all these billions of euros that will start to flow very soon with the Next Generation EU, to help modernize the welfare states, to have a widespread guidance system, to empower really people and empower the talents that are within them, sometimes just to be discovered.
I really hope to see that in the future as well. And I would like to get back to you in a little bit of how the EU can sort of help inspire and change the lives of young people, especially in terms of their career. But I wanted to ask you as well, so in your career as well, you've actually had a complete career change as well. So you went from ThinkYoung, and then you continued to do more sort of project-based work as a project assistant, and then you went later to work as a project consultant. So I'd love to know, and then you went completely and shifted the other way and went into journalism. And I would love to know, what made you completely shift gear and go for your love for journalism?
Yeah, exactly. That's how it went. Well, as I was saying, I mean, I think in the era we've entered, and nobody, perhaps not everyone, perhaps realized this already, but we are entering a time when we will need to, in our lives, to change probably different jobs, each of us, perhaps even change sectors or tasks. So as many, I think, in my generation, more than in the previous ones, at some point I got a little bit bored of what I was doing. Very simply, I thought I was not doing what was my real passion, and I was not having an impact as I wished. As you were saying, I was working as a EU project manager consultant, which is something interesting, of course, but I wanted to experience something different, and perhaps something I was that was more passionating to me. So as you said, I went back to some retraining, I can say. It's by doing a a master in journalism while I was still working as a freelance in the other time of the week. And so in the spite of a couple of years, I actually reconverted in some way to another sector while I was not, giving away what I had learned till that moment, because I think I can say I'm pretty proud of one thing, not many things, but of the opportunity to be able to do different things. I don't see myself 100% as a journalist, as probably in the 20th century one would have been just one thing, lawyer, journalist, or consultant. I think the things and the activities in this century are very much more interrelated, and so being able to do different things and is something positive. And in my current job, just to finalize, I actually do different kinds of things. And now at Reset Doc, I am a journalist, so I'm coordinating all the editorial work for our magazine, for our podcasts, and so on. But I still also deal with projects and like conferences or educational projects, and so I'm still also in project management. And I think it's a plus to be able to do different things and at the same time, so that hopefully we don't get too bored.
No, it's great to hear, because before I ask you about a bit more of how you found that you want to do journalism and your love for journalism, I want to ask as well. So a lot of young people, they're told a bit earlier into their education, their university degrees, that you should find what you want to do. You should find a company that you want to work with for the next 10, 15 years, and then you should continue on that one straight career path. But I think, especially nowadays, a lot of people are looking sort of stay 1 or 2 years at a job, or keep moving and keep exploring new career changes. But I think especially a lot of young people are still very hesitant to do that because there's not a lot of stability or structure. Is there anything, do you think this is a good idea to sort of keep moving from job to job, or to keep changing career path? Obviously you probably do, because you've again shifted from project management to journalism. But do you think, what would you say to young people like myself who maybe are thinking about not just going straight into one sort of job for the next 10, 15 years and want to explore different options?
No, I think, of course, there is not one general response, one overall response which can apply to all cases. First, because we are all different from one to another. So there are people who prefer, absolute stability and predictability in some way. So they like having the same job and perhaps being in the same city all their life. And I would have no judgment at all on this. That's understandable. Then you have other people who love, as we were saying, experiencing different things and changing. I think that that's a way of living our lives and our careers, which can be very stimulating. But of course, I would advise just to be careful when making these choices, just to make sure that you're not getting lost at the end of the day in your path, but that you're building up on a stair, the steps on a stair, and that you're fully aware of where you are going. And but once you are convinced that the new place you're going to is really better for you than the previous one, then why not go ahead?
That's a brilliant piece of advice there. So I want to actually talk a bit more about your career in journalism. So what made you sort of find your love for journalism? What sort of sparked that interest in journalism? And what made you want to completely shift gear and pursue that?
Well, no, actually, it was something that was in some way that's always been within me. I've always loved writing since I was at school. I think it was something which was flowing pretty good for me. And I had had other experiences writing in magazines, the university or high school, like many people. But I had never really thought of doing this as my main activity. Then at some point I realized that this could be the main thing to do and not just a hobby for me. And that's on a personal level, let's say. On a collective level, I would say then it's probably the one thing is from my country perspective, from Italy, I've always found that the public debate here and public discourse also in media is very much too focused on too local, too focused on Italian things and too close to the global phenomena which are really shaping the world we live in, and there was too little public debate and also just news relevance on this. So I was hoping also to, with my background, having studied and worked abroad and speaking different languages and so on, to try and then provide this to this industry, if I can call it like this, to bring, and this is of course a generational effort, it cannot be just a personal one, to bring a more global perspective also in the news industry, I would say, because I think for any of us, it's impossible to grasp what's going on around ourselves, whatever thing you're referring to, if you're not taking into account the European sphere or the global sphere in many ways. So I was hoping to have an impact on this as well. If I manage to hit this target, you will ask me perhaps on the next occasion in 10 years.
No, hopefully we can have you on in the next 10 years for a catch-up alumni talk as well. So I wanted to ask, because you started your career in journalism when social media was absolutely going on the pathway upwards, and now I think as well social media is sort of the front line of journalism, and a lot of journalists have to sort of use social media to promote their work, and is also it's a barrier as well in that sense. Social media isn't the best place to get your news, and it's a lot of especially journalists face a lot of backlash on there as well. So tell me about a bit of your experience starting your career in journalism, and especially during the rise of social media.
It's the environment we all need to face in some form to get into, but I think we should not exaggerate their importance. I mean, I think that, as you say, the news should be written and published and read on independent media outlets, and most of the times, rather than in social media. I see, many journalists as well that publish their stories sometimes directly on Facebook or on Twitter and social media. I think we should, the effort should be to bring people to read and stories, or, as I say, podcasts or videos, whatever, on trusted journalism sources, because of course on social media I think that should stay as a meaningful platform for discussing, for debates, but we need to distinguish a little bit the two spheres, otherwise it will become impossible to see what the trusted sources are and what is just the conversation, which is of course helpful, but it's just when you're going to have a coffee at the bar and having a conversation, and then you're not expecting to have a newsroom telling you the news. So it's the same distinction. I think it's important to maintain.
Oh, thank you. We have one question from our audience, but before then, I want to ask you one last question about especially young people, those who are wanting to pursue a career in journalism. It's a very competitive field, and it's often the case it's very difficult to find work, as it is in many other sectors, but journalism in particular is just very, very competitive. So what advice would you give to young journalists who want to sort of get out there And more in general, what advice would you give to young people who want to sort of kickstart their career and sort of build their passion in that?
Yeah, as you say, first of all, for sure to be aware, to be aware and ready to face a difficult sector, because of course it's for the kind of phenomena you were just mentioning. So the explosion of public discourse everywhere else. Media in general are losing money, most of them, almost all of them, and so it's difficult for them to hire, especially on a structural level, journalists. So you need to be prepared not to get very rich, probably, and certainly not in the short period. But if that's still the passion, as I was saying, that one really believes in, and if you really think you have a talent for something, then go ahead and build it, as in any other sector. And of course, as probably many other coaches would say for career also in other sectors, it's important, I think, also to specialize as far as possible in one specific sector. Of course, you need to know a little bit what's going on in general overall, but you also, it's important also to specialize on some specific sector that you become, an expert in some way, because then again, as we were saying previously, then you will be able to go to whatever employer and not tell him, hire me because I need a job, but hire me because I'm the best to tell you that story on that specific sector, and he will probably not be able to refuse at that point.
No, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think I'll take that on myself. So thank you very much. We have actually some questions from the audience I would like to ask you before we close up. So we'll have our first. So we have a question here. So if you were in charge of ThinkYoung for one day, what would you implement to strengthen our relationship with the alumni? What would you benefit from?
Well, this was a cool startup thing to build a community. I think this talk series. I'm not sure whether ThinkYoung has one already, but I know many organizations have a kind of advisory board or something like this. So I know that Andreas, the founder, dislikes the bureaucratic things and the formal nouns like this one, but I wouldn't mind thinking of creating some kind of board or of just meeting space or whatever we can call it for the alumni to have their inputs and have their say on how the organization could go ahead and what projects it could engage in.
No, that sounds like thank you very much for that. So hopefully we'll take it on at ThinkYoung as well. So I want to say thank you very much, Simone, for joining us today. And before we go, I want to say to everyone that we'll announce some very exciting news towards the end of the webinar series as well. So I want you to keep in tune for that. So keep up on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever social media platform you like to find us on. And we're looking forward to announcing that to you. So I want to say thank you, Simone, and it's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you soon, hopefully. Bye.